Hi, Beth.
Because she's nice and she's tiny and she's faithful.
Because she's nice and she's tiny and she's faithful. What do we mean by faithful?
Not evil.
Not just nice.
And she reads the Bible. She's faithful to God, and she can be reliable.
Reliable. What does reliable mean?
Being able to be dependent on.
There you go. That'll work. Being able to be depended on. That's very good. Okay. So yes, I would say out of all the girls of what we know so far, Beth is the most reliable, right? When she says she's gonna do something, she's gonna do it. When you need something done, she'll get it done. Okay? Yes. Brooklyn?
She's not shy.
I can agree with that. All right, chapter 17, Little Faithful. All right, so this is right after Marmee has left, and the girls are trying their best to be on their best behavior and help us as much as possible. Okay? For a week, the amount of virtue in the old house was really amazing. Everyone seemed in a heavenly frame of mind, and self-denial was all the fashion. Relieved of their first anxiety about their father, the girls relaxed their praiseworthy efforts a little and began to fall back into old ways. They did not forget their motto, but hoping and keeping busy seemed to grow easier, and after such tremendous exertions, they felt that their efforts deserved a holiday. Why did the girl? So it's kind of like this. When Marmee left, at first they tried to be as good as possible, as obedient and helpful and wonderful and pure-minded as possible. But as time goes on, that gets harder and harder and harder. Have you ever had that? You ever made a promise to yourself, I'm going to be as good as I can. I'm never going to lose my temper. I'm not going to lie. And the first couple of days you get it, and then it kind of starts to wear off after a while. Okay? That's kind of what's happening here. Not only that, but they've also gotten news from Mr. Brooke that Father actually is doing better. So they don't feel the need to be as perfect anymore because Father's actually doing a little bit better. So they're still trying to be good, but they don't got to be like really, really good. You know what I'm saying? Okay. Joe caught a bad cold through neglect to cover the shorn head enough and was ordered to stay at home until she goes better. For Aunt March didn't like to hear people read with colds in their heads. Joe liked this, though, and subsided on the sofa to nurse her cold with books. Amy found that housework and artwork did not go well together and returned to making her mud pies. Meg went daily to her pupils and sewed, or thought she did at home, but much of her time was spent in writing long letters to her mother or reading the Washington dispatches over and over. Beth kept on with all the little duties, and many of the sisters' duties also, for they were forgetful, and the house seemed like a clock whose pendulum was gone a-visiting. What is a pendulum? Someone read that subscript down below, or superscript. Matthew?
Pendulum. A weight or other object hung from a fixed point so that it swings freely back and forth, used to determine the rate of movement in a clock.
Good. So what keeps the clock working? Manny? Oh, well, I mean it literally. What makes a clock keep on time? What we just read. What's that word? Pendulum. Okay? The pendulum is what keeps the clock from getting off. Okay? Because the pendulum works all the time, you can always count on the pendulum to be the same. It keeps the clock the way it's supposed to be. Who is the pendulum in this house that has gone a-visiting? Matthew?
The girls?
Not the girls.
Beth?
Caleb? Not Beth. The pendulum gone a-visiting, meaning they're not there, they're gone somewhere else for right now.
Joe, Meg, and
No, not them either. Edgar? Not Mr. Brooke. Brian?
Mrs. March.
Mrs. March. Marmee. Marmee is who they can always depend on to keep everything running the same way, right? But now that pendulum, that major piece of the house that keeps everything running the same, now that she's gone, now all the other girls have to pick up her slack. But who's the only one doing all their duties? Everyone?
Beth.
Beth. Joe is She didn't cover her new haircut the way she was supposed to. Her head got cold and she got sick. Okay. Amy is too busy working on her artwork to do her house chores. And Meg is doing her work, but also spends a lot of time writing long letters and reading the Washington dispatches.
What's a dispatch?
Doesn't quite get to all of her chores. I don't really know. I'm assuming it has to do with the news of like how the army is doing in Washington, which would be she's probably looking for news on her father. Okay. So Beth is picking up everybody's slack. Okay. And knowing Beth, do you think she complained about it? No. She just knew these things have to be done. My sisters didn't do them, so I'll do them. Well, after a while, if you're doing extra work and no one else is helping you, how are you going to feel? Exhausted. Okay? So let's see what happens. When her heart got heavy, meaning Beth, when she got tired and exhausted, with longings for mother or fears for father, she went away into a certain closet, hid her face in the folds of a dear gown, and made her little moan and prayed her little prayer quietly by herself. Nobody knew what cheered her up after a fit, but everyone felt how sweet and helpful Beth was, and fell into a way of going to her for comfort or advice in their small affairs. So when Beth would get upset, she would go into the closet, cry, let it all out, and then kind of pick herself back up and go back out about her work. Okay? When the other girls got upset, what did they do? They came to Beth and said, "Oh, Beth, you're never going to believe what happened." So Beth is listening to everyone's problems, dealing with her own problems, doing everyone's work, and she is just downright exhausted. All of them, all the other girls, were unconscious that this experience was a test of character. And when the first excitement was over, they felt that they had done well and deserved praise. So they did. But their mistake, this is the other girls, their mistake was in ceasing or stopping to do well. And they learned this lesson through much anxiety and regret. Meg, I wish you would go and see the Hummels. You know Mother told us not to forget them, said Beth, 10 days after Mrs. March's departure. I'm too tired to go this afternoon, said Meg, rocking comfortably as she sewed. Okay, well, can't you go, Joe? Asked Beth. Oh, no, it's too stormy out there for me with my cold, replied Joe. I thought your cold was almost well. Well, I mean, it's well enough for me to go out with Lori, but it's not well enough for me to go over to the Hummel's house, said Joe, laughing, but looking a little ashamed of her inconsistency. Why does Joe feel ashamed? Jacob?
She's milking it.
She's milking it. What do you mean by that?
As in she's like, using it to get stuff or not to do stuff.
What is it she's not wanting to do?
Have to go over to some people who are poorer than her.
I have to go over to the Hummels, but what is she willing to do?
Go to play with Lori.
Yeah. She's not too sick to go and play with Lori, but she's too sick to go and help the Hummels.
But
Brooklyn?
Yeah.
it's kind of like how we like the 16-year-olds on the camera. I'm not saying, oh my goodness, I'm so sick. And then they're like, okay, then go and have to go quick. And they're like, okay. And then they ask their mom to go to like their friend's house and they're like, I thought you were so sick. And they're like,
Mm-hmm.
well,
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
about that.
So Meg says to Beth, well, why don't you just go yourself? Asked Meg. Well, I have been every day, but the baby is sick and I don't really know what to do for it. I think you or Hannah ought to go. Beth spoke earnestly, and Meg promised that she would go tomorrow. Ask Hannah for some nice little mess and take it around, Beth. The air will do you good, said Joe, adding apologetically. I would go, but I really want to finish my writing. But my head aches, and I'm tired, so I thought maybe some of you would go for once, said Beth. Well, Amy will be here presently, and I'm sure she will run down for us, suggested Meg. So Beth lay down on the sofa, the others returned to their work, and the Hummels were forgotten. An hour passed. Amy did not come. Meg went to her room to try on a new dress. Joe was absorbed in her story, and Hannah was sound asleep before the kitchen fire. When Beth quietly put on her hood, filled her basket with odds and ends for the poor children, and went out into the chilly air with a heavy head and a grieved look in her patient eyes. So, Beth has been the one going to the Hummels for days and days and days and days and days. She's doing all the work and taking care of the Hummels. She asked her sisters for help, but they're too busy to go and care for the Hummels.
You go in the car.
Yeah.
And
Put the scissors away. But yes, it was late when Beth came back, and no one saw her creep upstairs and shut herself into her mother's room. Half an hour after, Joe went to Mother's closet for something, and there she found little Beth, sitting on the medicine chest, looking very grave, with red eyes and a medicine bottle in her hand. "Christopher Columbus! What is the matter?" cried Joe. Beth put out her hand as if to warn her off, and asked quickly, "You haven't had scarlet fever, have you?" "No, you've had scarlet fever, haven't you?" "Yeah, years ago when Meg had it. Why?" "Okay, well then I'll tell you. Oh, Joe, the baby is dead." "What baby?" "Mrs. Hummel's. It died in my lap before she even got home," cried Beth with a sob. "Oh, my poor dear, how dreadful for you. I ought to have gone," said Joe, taking her sister in her arms as she sat down in her mother's big chair with a remorseful face. "It wasn't dreadful, Joe. It was only so sad. I saw in a minute that it was sicker, but Lotkin said that her mother had gone to go get a doctor, so I took the baby and let Lottie rest. It seemed asleep, but all of a sudden it gave a little cry and trembled, and then it just laid there, very still. I tried to warm its feet, and Lottie gave it some milk, but it didn't stir at all, and I knew that it was dead." "Oh, don't cry, dear. What did you do?" "Well, I just sat there and held it softly until Mrs. Hummel came with the doctor. He said it was dead and looked at Heinrich and Minna, who have sore throats. 'Scarlet fever, ma'am. You ought to have called me long before,' he said crossly. Mrs. Hummel just told him that she was poor, and so she had tried to cure the baby herself, but now it was too late, and she could only ask him to help the others and trust to charity for his pay. Well, he smiled at her then and was a lot kinder, but it was very sad. And I cried with them till he turned around all of a sudden and told me to go home right away, or I would have the fever." Why did the doctor order Beth to go home? Brian?
She might get sick. I think she's already sick right now, right?
Oh no.
How dare you spoil it for us? It literally said
No, you won't, cried Joe, hugging her close with a frightened look. "Oh, Beth, if you should be sick, I could never forgive myself. What shall we do?" Why would Joe never forgive herself if Beth got sick? Sadiqa?
Because she refused to go to Hummel's.
Very good. Now, scarlet fever is kind of like chickenpox. Raise your hand if you've had chickenpox before.
No.
No one. Oh my goodness.
That's
Okay. Chickenpox. Is chickenpox not a thing anymore? I don't even know.
I thought chickenpox was
More when you're a
extinct.
baby.
Nobody gets it.
Yikes. All right. Well, chickenpox is it's a sickness that once you get it, you get like itchy welts all over you, basically. But once you get it, you don't usually get it again. Okay, which is a lot of kids contract it once, and then as you get older, you never have it again because your body learns to fight it off. Scarlet fever is similar. That's why Beth asks Joe, "Have you had the scarlet fever?" before she even comes in, because she's like, "Don't come close unless you've had it." It's kind of like COVID, right? You know how when someone has it for like 3 months, they're good or whatever, 2, whatever it is. Okay,
I've had it.
it's kind of like that. She's like, "Wait, you've had it, right? If so, then you can come in, because then you won't get sick from me." Stop.
No, I've had it.
Stop. Okay? And Joe says, yes, I've had it. But Beth has been at the Hummel's house. The baby died of scarlet fever. All the other little kids have sore throats. And the doctor says that they all now have scarlet fever. And Beth, who's been taking care of them all this time, could possibly have it as well.
You guys.
Okay? When she comes home, she already had a headache before she went, right? She comes home and now she's sitting in her mother's closet on the medicine chest where they keep all their medicine. Okay? And she's looking for the right medicine to take because she's afraid she has it. Okay? And Joe could have avoided all of this if she had just gone to help her. So Beth says, "Oh, don't be frightened. I guess I shouldn't have it that badly. I looked in Mother's book and I saw that it begins with a headache, sore throat, and queer feelings, kind of like I have. So I did take some medicine and I feel a little bit better," said Beth, laying her cold hands on her hot forehead and trying to look well. "Oh, if Mother was only at home," exclaimed Joe, seizing the book and feeling that Washington now felt like an immense long way off. She read a page, felt Beth's head, peeped into her throat, and then said gravely, "You know what? You've been over that baby every day for more than a week, and you've been among the others who are going to have it. So I'm afraid you're going to have it, Beth. I'll call Hannah. She knows all about this, all about sickness. Okay, but don't let Amy come near me. She's never had it, and I should hate to give it to her. Can you and Meg have it over again?" asked Beth anxiously. "I guess not. I don't even care if I do. Serves me right, me selfish pig, to let you go and just stay writing rubbish by myself," muttered Joe as she went to consult Hannah. Now she's mad at herself. She's like, so what if I do get it? I deserve it. I've been selfish. And she has.
So is me.
The good soul was wide awake in a minute and took the lead at once, assuring that there was no need to worry. Everyone had scarlet fever, and if rightly treated, nobody died. All of which Joe believed, and felt much relieved as they went up to call Meg. Pause. Why did Mrs. Hummel not go get the doctor earlier,
Oh,
before the baby died? Manny?
he was poor.
Because she was poor. She knew she wasn't going to be able to pay him. But once the baby was getting so sick, she couldn't not go get the doctor. She basically came and begged him and said, "Sir, I can't pay you, but my baby is dying. Will you please come help her?" And all she had to rely on was hoping the doctor would be a good person and help her for free. Okay, let's see. But Hannah says, "Listen, it's not a big deal. As long as it's treated properly, no one's going to die." Okay. Everyone had scarlet fever, and if rightly treated, nobody died. All of which Joe believed, and felt much relieved as they went up to call Meg. "Now, I'll tell you what we'll do," said Hannah, when she had examined and questioned Beth. "We will have Dr. Bangs come and take a look at you, dear, and see that we start off right. Then we'll send Amy off to Aunt March's for a spell to keep her out of harm's way, and one of you girls can stay at home and amuse Beth for a day or two." Why do Joe and Meg get to stay at home, but Amy has to leave? Connor?
Because they already had it, so they can't get it again.
But Amy?
But Amy can't get it because she's never had it.
Very good. So they're kind of quarantining Amy, so to speak. Okay? "Oh, I shall stay, of course. I'm the oldest," began Meg, looking anxious and self-reproachful. "Well, I shall stay because it's my fault she's sick. I told Mother that I'd do the errands, and I haven't," said Joe decidedly. "Okay, well, which will you have stay with you, Beth? There ain't no need of but one," said Hannah. "I think I'll have Joe, please." And Beth leaned her head against her sister with a contented look, which effectually settled that point. "Okay, well, I'll go and tell Amy," said Meg, feeling a little hurt, yet rather relieved on the whole, for she did not like nursing, and Joe did. Amy rebelled outright, passionately declaring that she had rather have the fever than go to Aunt March's, and Meg left her in despair to ask Hannah what should be done. Is Amy excited about going to Aunt March's?
No.
No. She would rather have the fever than have to go to Aunt March's house.
Well, don't tell her that it's not Bradley's choice, though.
It's not. Before she came back, Lori walked into the parlor to find Amy sobbing with her head in the sofa cushions. She told her story, expecting to be consoled, but Lori only said in his most wheedlesome tone, "Now, be a sensible little woman and do as they say. No, don't cry. But hear what a jolly plan I've got. You go to Aunt March's, and I'll come and take you out every day, driving or walking, and we'll have capital times. Won't that be better than moping around here? I don't wish to be sent off as if I was in the way, began Amy in an injured voice. Oh, bless your heart, child. It's to keep you well. You don't want to be sick, do you? No, I'm sure I don't, but it's so dull at Aunt March's, and she is so cross, said Amy, looking rather frightened. Well, it won't be dull and boring with me popping in every day to tell you how Beth is and then to take you out gallivanting. The old lady likes me, and I'll be as sweet as possible to her, so that she won't peck at us, whatever we do. Well, will you take me out in that trotting wagon with Puck? On my honor, I will, as a gentleman. And you're going to come every single day? See if I don't. And you're going to bring me back here the minute that Beth is well? Yes, the identical minute. Well, I guess I will, said Amy slowly. Good girl. Call Meg and tell her that you'll give in, said Laurie, with an approving pat, which annoyed Amy more than the giving in. Okay. How does Laurie convince Amy to go to Aunt March's after all? Brian?
He gives her a plan, and she's like, fine, it won't be that bad. So, do you think Amy rolled her eyes when like?
Oh yeah, for sure. Give me a break. He patted my head like I'm a child. She is a child. Yeah. Yes, he gives her his plan. What is his plan?
It's every day I'll go to the house. The lady likes me, so I can take you out.
Okay, I'll take you out. Very good. I'll come visit you every day, and I'll take you out to do something fun. Okay. Meg and Joe came running down to behold the miracle that had been wrought, and Amy, feeling very precious and self-sacrificing, promised to go, if the doctor said that Beth was going to be ill. How is the little dear? Asked Laurie, for Beth was his special pet, and he felt more anxious about her than he liked to show. She's lying down on Mother's bed and feels better. The baby's death troubled her, but I dare say that she's only got a cold. Hannah says she thinks so, but she looks worried, and that makes me kind of fidgety, answered Meg. What a trying world it is, said Joe, rumpling up her hair in a fretful way. No sooner do we get out of one trouble than down comes another one. Well, don't make a porcupine of yourself. It isn't becoming. So Joe was like playing with her hair, making it stick up everywhere. Settle your wig, Joe, and tell me if I shall telegraph to your mother or do anything else, asked Laurie, who had never been reconciled to the loss of his friend's one beauty. How did Laurie feel about Joe cutting off all her hair?
Disgusting.
Layla? Yeah, he was not quite supportive. We will. Joe, go and get Dr. Bangs at once, commanded Meg. We can't decide anything till he is bed. Stay where you are, Joe. I'm the errand boy to this establishment, said Laurie, taking up his cap. Oh, I have great hopes for that boy, observed Joe, watching him fly over the fence with an approving smile. He does very well for a boy, was Meg's somewhat ungracious answer, but the subject did not interest her. Dr. Bangs came and said that Beth had symptoms of the fever, but he thought she would have it lightly, though he looked sober over the Hummel story. Okay, so he says, yep, she does have scarlet fever. It doesn't look like it's going to be that bad for her, but then when they told him about the Hummel's baby dying from it, he was like, ooh, this might be a little more serious than I thought. Amy was ordered off at once and departed in great state with Joe and Laurie as escort. Aunt March received them with her usual hospitality. Listen to how welcoming and hospitable she is. What do you want now? She asked, looking sharply over her spectacles, while the parrot while the parrot, sitting on the back of her chair, called out, "Go away! No boys allowed here!" Lori retired to the window, and Joe told her story. "Oh, no more than I expected if you're allowed to go poking around among poor folks. Amy can stay here and make herself useful, if she isn't sick. Oh, don't cry, child. It worries me to hear people sniff." Listen to Aunt Marcia's response. She's like, "Well, that's what you get for hanging around poor people like that. You should have known you were going to get some kind of disease." She is not very nice.
Wait, what poor people?
The Hummels.
They're
Amy was on the point of crying, but Lori slyly pulled the parrot's tail, which caused Polly to utter an astonished croak and call out, "Bless my boots!" in such a funny way that she laughed and said, "What do you hear from your mother?" asked the old lady gruffly. "Oh, father is much better," replied Joe, trying to keep sober and be serious, with the parrot making funny noises. "Oh, is he? Well, that won't last long, I fancy. March never had any stamina." What is stamina? Micah? She's like, "Oh, well, I'm sure he'll get worse here in a little bit. He never did do very well fighting things off,"
That's so rude.
was the cheerful reply. "Joe, you'd better go at once. It isn't proper to be gadding about so late with a rattle-pated boy like—" What does gadding mean? Wyatt, what does gadding mean?
Moving around religiously.
Good. What about rattle-pated? Matthew?
Giddy, talkative, foolish.
Good. She's like, "It isn't proper for you to be running around with this foolish boy." Talking about Lori. "Hold your tongue, you disrespectful old bird!" cried Polly, tumbling off the chair with a bounce and running to peck the rattle-pated boy, who was shaking with laughter at the last speech. "I don't think I can bear it here, but I'll try," thought Amy, as she was left alone with Aunt March. "Get along, you fright!" screamed Polly, and at that rude speech, Amy could not restrain a small sniff. She was like, "This is going to be horrible." Oh, that bird. Also, pause. Why does Polly scream at the lady, "Hold your tongue, you old bird"? Ian?
Because she's an old lady. Yeah.
How do parrots learn to talk?
By repeating sentences.
By repeating what they hear.
He's just repeating stuff
That Aunt March has said to him. But this is the perfect timing because she's in the middle of insulting Lori. "It isn't proper to be gadding about with that rattle-pated boy like, hold your tongue, you disrespectful old bird!"